Hello, hello, hello. Welcome and thank you for those of you who have stuck around, who have been here from the morning, who are just tuning in from wherever you're tuning in the world. Please tell us where you're tuning in from. Welcome to Africa Week 2020 August event. We are having it on the 1st of August so we can dedicate the rest of August to properly plan and orchestrate our September Africa Week 2020 event, because unlike how this day has been and how yesterday was and how our Juneteenth event, our September one is not going to be a one-day event. It is going to be a full week. But we'll talk about that later on in the day. Stay tuned with us. As you pop on, as you log in, please tell us where you are tuning in from and where you are from. And if you are working on preserving an endangered language or revitalizing your own language or learning your own language, please let us know. This is a very informal and open conversation as we are under the virtual family tree, just learning from one another. We'll be sharing our experience on the importance of intergenerational efforts for revitalizing endangered languages. I will start with a video that was it was made for the Nubia Initiative's inaugural conference that was held at the African Union Mission in Washington, D.C. And it is about a Nubian app designed to revitalize the endangered Nubian language. Let me just figure out how to share this screen with you. And here we are.
الجد من دوت، ولازم يكون عندنا كل الخلفيه اللي نقدر نتكلم بيها عن النوبه بشكل قوي جدا. بس الاهم من الخلفيه ديت ان احنا شفنا كتب كتير قوي بتتكتب عن النوبه، وشفنا كتب كتير قوي اتكلمت عن اللغه النوبيه، انما تقريبا ما حدش قرا. فاحنا من هنا بدانا ان احنا نفكر في فكره بديله ان احنا نشتغل عن طريق الابلكيشن. الابلكيشن طبعا شيء مكلف جدا بالنسبه للشباب بيبداوا فكره زي كده اهوت. وطبعا فكرتنا مش مجرد بتنتهي عند ان احنا هنعمل اللي احنا عملناه في السبع شهور اللي فاتوا. موضوع اللغه اعمق من كده بكتير، والحضاره النوبيه اقدم من كده بكتير. فلذلك احنا محتاجين وجود ناس اكتر، وجود دعم اكتر، سواء دعم معنوي او دعم مادي بشكل قانوني الى حد ما، ان احنا نقدر ننفذ دوت. بنطلب من كل الناس اللي ممكن تكون شركه في نوبي عن طريق ان هي نزلت الابلكيشن او برايها، ان هي تدعمنا باراء اقوى، تدعمنا بمعارف اكثر تقدر تساعدنا ان احنا ننشئ الابلكيشن دوت في اي دوله في دول العالم. الدعم المنظمات المهتمه بالثقافه، سواء عن طريق تعليم تقنيات معينه لتطوير الابلكيشن، او عن طريق دعمهم المادي لجزء ان احنا في جزء من الابلكيشن ان احنا نقدر نوصل بيه، نطوره ان احنا نقدر نوصل بيه العالميه. اعتقد ان دي اقل حاجه ممكن نطلبها من الناس اللي قدرت ان هي تنقذ الاثار بتاعت اجدادنا، ولغايه النهارده هم بيفتخروا ان هم عملوا دوت. ففي لغه موجوده عند نفس الناس اللي كانت عايشه مع الفرع في جنب المعابد ديت، محتاجه ان حد يحافظ عليها. احنا بنعمل اللي علينا وبنسهل عليكم السلالم الاولى، فمحتاجين منكم انكم تكملوا بقيه السلالم.
Thank you for the feedback. Sorry about the audio. I wasn't sure what was going on there. I think I was trying to give the full screen, and in doing so, I muted the microphone. Still navigating technology, which has been one of the fun challenges of leveraging technology to revitalize this endangered language. I will be speaking in a bit of a different capacity than what some of you or those of you who have been tuned in with Africa Week 2020 so far have been hearing me speak in. Today I will be speaking specifically on my work with the Nubia Initiative and on my personal journey on learning our endangered Nubian language. I should say Nubian languages, but I'm trying to learn one first and then we'll take the other. Baby steps. While we wait for our panelists to come in, because we have structured a rather, structured flexibility. Hello, Imani. We really emphasize how informal these conversations are. They're important conversations, so for people to show up, and here is Mazen showing up, just as we say for people to show up. Thank you, Mazen.
Of course, thank you for having me.
To show up, but we also want people to know that really this is family coming together to share our truth, to share our experience, to share what it is to have this language, and why is it important to revitalize a language that was spoken years and years and years and years and decades and centuries and ages,
millennia,
history, a lifetime ago. Why do we need to revitalize that language? What purpose does it have? But the theme of Africa Week 2020 this August is communicating resilience. And we were saying earlier in the panel before, if we don't know our language, how do we even begin to communicate? How do we communicate resilience? How do we communicate our revolution? How do we communicate what our ancestors have left behind for us to our children if we don't know the language? I went to my village for the first time this January, and I was blessed to meet with my aunt, my father's older sister and only sister. I was not able to communicate with her because she doesn't speak Arabic, and I don't speak Nubian. And, well, how do I tell her I want to know what her favorite memory as a child was? How do I ask her what it was like when people started leaving the island to move to the mainland? How do I try and understand what our grandparents had to go through when the youth started packing their bags and moving to the center or leaving the country altogether to look for other opportunities, if I can't speak that language? So what the Nubia Initiative has done, I started the Nubia Initiative with my sister, Dalia. And just as I say that, my sister, Aya, tunes in. Peace from the DMV, 10 minutes away from me. Yes, I've had to leave my house and come into my sister's house here. Sister and friend, if you've tuned into Africa Week 2020's inaugural event, Tamara led the meditation every morning throughout the week, and she has now opened her house and provided me with internet and food, yes, and coffee, which I'm very grateful for.
Africa we cook.
Yes, the Africa we cook. By the way, we're going, come September, we're going to have a series of cooking classes. So stay tuned and put them down. And once we release that schedule, come through and tell us what you want to help us cook, or what you want to teach us how to cook. Back to why we started the Nubia Initiative. Delia, my older sister, and myself, we had two very different experiences engaging our heritage. And mine was specifically through language. Mine was encountering Herman Bell, Professor Herman Bell, who is an oasis of knowledge when it comes to all things Nubia, in my opinion. And he comes to me and starts speaking in this language that, yes, I've heard, but I don't understand, and I definitely don't speak. And so I looked like a lost child as he was speaking. And he was so shocked. He's like, "Are you not Nubian?" "No, I am. I am Nubian." He's like, "How dare you not speak your language? How dare you not speak your language?" Woohoo, you're down for cooking, aren't we all? Zaza's down for eating, aren't we all? Zaza. Joey, thank you. The look in Herman's face that day, that evening, when he was coming to give a presentation, and the title of that presentation, the title of that lecture was Paradise Lost, and he was talking about Nubia. It wasn't adding up until I went and I did my own research to understand why this man was so angry and so heartbroken that I didn't speak my language. And that's when I started realizing, wow, that's why we need the language. Because we can't communicate anything. We can't communicate where we came from, what our ancestors have done, what they have left behind as a legacy, how they have done it, if I don't speak this language. So we started the Nubia Initiative so that we can leverage all we know how to do. Leverage arts. That's not me, the creative gene sort of skipped me, that's all Delia. Leverage academia, and leverage technology to protect, preserve, and promote Nubian heritage. And July was Nubian Heritage Month. In your free time, take a moment and Google the hashtag Nubian Heritage Month and just see some of the facts, some of the history, some of the truths that our people have been sharing throughout this month. I'm so grateful that Mazen is here with us, because despite his young age, he has been educating me and correcting me when it comes to our language. I'm still learning, so there are things that I'm not comfortable saying, I'm not comfortable owning, I'm not comfortable claiming. And he's not comfortable correcting just because we don't know how or where. And so I'm here to say, I am here to learn. Anyone who has something to teach me, please do. And I asked Mazen here to tune in and share with us what has his journey been with the Nubian language. I don't know if you can hear me. Mazen? Hello? Mazen can't hear me, which is weird. I'm usually very, very loud. Let me see. While he does, oh, it might be the connection. Bon. I was told the same way when I moved to PR. How can I not know the language? It was embarrassing to say the least. On that note, I learned by running through the mountains with my cousin. Nature was there for me since the first day. It's still there. Joey, you keep dropping this knowledge, and I know you were meant to be joining us on the earlier panel with the history of hip hop. I pray that you are feeling stronger and that you are feeling better. I know you weren't feeling 100% earlier today, but if you feel better and you'd like to join us, please let me know and I'll send you the link. We'd love to know this experience, how you've navigated learning this language and why it was important for you to learn it. Mazen has this blessing that he is with working with his father, and I'll have that. Oh, there we go. He's back. It's unfrozen. Mazen, can you tell us your journey with the Nubian language? Why is it so important to preserve this language?
All right. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. And I really appreciate being part of this conversation, which is a very important one. I don't know if you guys can hear my dad talking in the background. He's talking in Nubian. Hopefully not, but yeah, he's talking in Nubian in the background.
Yes, I'm.
But I think just kind of to give everybody just a little brief history about me. I was born in a village in New Halfa. So I, for the first 6 years of my life, was around the language. I understand the language. I speak it because that's all we spoke in Halfa. You know, there's the Arabic wasn't really something that was taught. I mean, obviously we speak Arabic, but like most people, their first go-to is Nubian. That's their mother tongue. And so that's where kind of my background comes from. My parents speak Nubian, so I grew up around it in the house as well. And for me, I think what's really important about preserving this language is that it is a language of history. It is a language of culture. It is a language. It's my language. You know, that I think that's one of the most important things. It's mine. You know, like this is something that I grew up with. It's something that my people speak. It's the only way to communicate with some of my elders, as Dima was mentioning. You know, my grandma doesn't speak Arabic. You know, and if she does speak Arabic, she speaks broken Arabic. You know, she'll say like "hua" for a woman, which is masculine. So she doesn't speak Arabic, you know, and so in order for me to be able to communicate with some of my elders, I've had no choice but to learn the language. Does that make me an expert in the language? Absolutely not. You know, I'm not an expert by any means, and you know, therefore, I look forward to learning, which is part of, I think, one of the really important things about preservation of this language is the thirst and the drive for knowledge and the learning about it, and not just the learning the language itself, but learning the history that comes with it, you know, and I think that's a really important thing. In the last panel that we were on, one thing that was said that was really important is how can you teach your history if you don't speak the language? And that's something that's going to stick with me forever, because there's some things that can only be passed down orally and some things that are only passed down orally. And if you don't speak the language, both, metaphorically, meaning you understand the history, there's no way to relate that. There's no way to pass that on to the next generation. There's no way to just explain why certain things are done, there's no way to be able to explain why, for example, all our songs are love songs, and if they are love songs, they're about Nubia. You don't really, there's no way to explain that unless you speak the language, unless you understand the language, unless you understand the history. Excuse me for just 1 second. That's the house phone ringing.
And you can't hear me, I will repeat. In Arabic, we say "Tfaddali," join, help. As virtual as this is, and the screen won't stop us, imagine yourself having these tasty cucumbers and avocado. Yes, Beto, thank you. I think you can hear me now. There may be a bit of a lag. Let me know if you can hear me now. Joey, I've sent you the link. If you can tune in, please do. Anyone wanting to join this, again, this is an informal conversation about the importance of preserving our language, our endangered languages specifically. But something Beto said yesterday, Joey, I sent it to your messenger. Oh yes, I can send it to Sandra. Let me see if I can find her. Azuz, welcome. Eid Mubarak. Food stop and connected on our way to the river. Nice. Please send us some pictures. Let me see. Where can we find Sandra? Bear with me here. Okay, people, let's just make this easier. Here is the link. Hop in. As you will know, if you don't know by now, at Africa Week 2020, we work with what we have. We work with what we have. Beto was saying yesterday, yes, Joey, that's what I was going to say before my chronic state of distraction kicked in. Beto said that the act of speaking Spanish, despite still being colonized by the United States of America, is an act of resilience. Just speaking that language is an act of resilience, which is why, again, in the theme of today's event, it is sing, speak, stay, as all different ways of communicating resilience. And they're all linked, they're all connected. And we need to be able to find ways that will navigate all the different bumps or obstacles or challenges that are either put in our way or we find along the way or we have created for ourselves as a result of our self-inflicted state of mental slavery, our belief, our conditioning that we can't and won't amount for more or to more. I want to quickly give a shout. We did put the link to Nubi app, their page on Facebook, and the page, the video you saw earlier today was an old one. They have gone strides since then, created games, card games, board games since then. They're really getting creative with how they are leveraging all they can, working with all they have to preserve the language, specifically towards kids, to make it interesting and intriguing and fun for children to learn this language. Because what happened with our parents is that their parents, in a way, had them learning Arabic, had them assimilating to whatever culture they then found themselves in. And Sandra's joining us. Hola, Sandra. Thank you for joining us. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me well?
Perfectly. Great.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'm in the living room and Joey is in the studio to avoid the. And I told him, like, I'll talk to you later.
The echo. The echo. You're going to be watching, tuning. Is he feeling?
He is. I'm not quite sure what happened, but like I said, I messaged Beto. He had sent good wishes, and I told him, you know, la curandera, which is kind of like the witch doctor. I'm the witch doctor at home, so I was like, the witch doctor got him. I did some spell, and he's back on his feet.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, that I can thank my grandmother, my great grandmother for. Yeah, she taught me all those things, and I was lucky enough to have been raised by my great grandmother. She had other things that I didn't like the teachings of, but those things I keep.
Now, what language did she communicate those to you in?
So I grew up in New York City, but they would always speak to me in Spanish, and I would respond in English. And so I had a very basic knowledge of Spanish. Sometimes they would go too fast, as Puerto Ricans do. We're known for speaking very, very fast and broken up because we have our own dialect of the Spanish language. But she would break it down, and I could understand them fine. So everything I remember her speaking to me in Spanish. I vaguely remember her trying to tell me things in English if I really didn't understand. So I mean, that's pretty much how the upbringing was. I mean, you grew up in what we would call el barrio, and that all depends on where you're from. You know, you have a barrio everywhere, but I grew up in Manhattan, and in what they would call the barrio of Manhattan, and then at age 11 we moved to Puerto Rico, and I finished. That's where I met Joey in Puerto Rico.
I see. And that also where you actively began not just learning but engaging with the language,
immersing myself in. Yeah, so just the other day I actually made a comment on this other Facebook page, and it was kind of like a thing where Hispanics, Latinx or what have you, communicate, and it was talking about not saying the words correctly. So when I first the world is our barrio. That's right, Beto. Not saying words correctly. So when I first moved, I spoke what we would, I guess you would consider broken Spanish, right? And it was the way it was spoken in the city. So instead of calling it the roof, we would say rufo. Instead of calling it the yard, we would say yarda. Instead of calling it lunch, we would say lonche, right? So I came to Puerto Rico with all these words, swearing that this was correct because this is what my communities called it. So I go to school and my first day I was like, when's lonche? ¿Cuándo es lonche? And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And I'm like, what'd I say? I thought I cursed or something. And they're like, that's not how you say it. And then it caused me to actually be silent in school for the next school year. I did not want to communicate with anyone out of, because kids can be mean and they ridiculed. And that's what kids do. You do something funny, haha. So as someone as the way I was a very, very protected child. So I was like, you're fun at me. And, I did not want to speak at all until I knew for sure that I got the language right. And I finally did, and I got to the point where I should have known I was going to be an English teacher when I just like dove in to the language, and I learned all of the the grammar and how to break everything down. And then it got to the point where the native speakers were asking me for help for Spanish class. And this is my second language. And I don't consider it my second language because I was always raised by it. But because of my pronunciation of the Spanish language, you can tell that I have another language within my personal lexicon that it will definitely show. So they're like, yeah, you're not a native speaker. And it's like, maybe I'm not a native speaker, but both languages are mine. You know, I take the language along with the culture. It's both mine. Yeah, it's mine. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And interesting enough, we moved to Ohio. So, which is different because when I came here, I thought, you know, in comparison to the way I speak English in Puerto Rico, for Puerto Ricans, I speak perfect English. But when I came here, immediately people said, hey, you sound different. I can hear you that you have an accent. And I go, you can have an accent. You know, so it was kind of like, you telling me I don't know how to speak the language? And it's like, no, but I can hear that you speak a different language. Mm-hmm. So I go, oh, okay. And then I owned it. You know, it's like, well, yes, I do. I'm bilingual. And I want to learn more languages because if you study language, English teacher, Spanish, whatever, if you study language, for me, language is the manifestation of humanity. This is what makes us human. And this is how I start my class every school year. You're in English class. You're not here just because you have to take it. You're here because we have to develop it more. And I focused on English only because that was the best control that I had at the moment. That was the access that I had at the moment to become an English teacher. I knew I was going to be a teacher. What kind of teacher? I didn't know. I ended up being English teacher because I love literature and I know that I love language. But for me, what makes us human is our ability to transfer a code over millennia. No other living thing can do that, to my knowledge. I know that other species can communicate, but transfer a code for millennia, that's what humanity can do. That makes us special. And so that's what I try to project to my students as far as language is concerned, and why it's important for us to just appreciate and learn language.
Wow, that's so powerful. That was very, very powerful.
Awesome.
And I think something that I struggled with for a long time was, speaking another language as well. It's sounding not authentic, if that makes sense. Sounding not as fluent, sounding not as, it doesn't come off as smoothly, And so people will pick up on that, and they'll, as you mentioned, they're like, wait a minute, like there's something here that we're picking up on that's not, you're different, And so for a long time, that's definitely something that I struggled with. But at the end of the day, I realized that practice makes perfect as well. And I can't continue to learn if I don't try and don't get over that discomfort and get over that fear of being ostracized or of, whatever it is that comes with sounding different. And as you said, kids, kids are bullies. So they'll be like, how you sound different, So I appreciate that as well. And I'm glad to know that, that's not just an experience that I had. And that's not a fear that, I only had. And it feels good to have that kind of solidarity with somebody else. And I know that there are people who speak, a bunch of different languages that go through that same thing. So to have that global solidarity also is a very powerful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I had the experience of teaching. When I did teach in Puerto Rico, I was the English teacher for the school that I taught in Puerto Rico, and there was a group of teachers that were not as strong, and this was a school that was what they call fully English, which basically means the only class that they gave in Spanish was Spanish class. And so there was a team of colleagues that were not as strong in the English language, and they kind of needed some help. So I gave them kind of like a tutoring class, And one of the things that I started off with this class, now, mind you, I've never taught adults. I've only taught kids, I'm a pre-K through 12th grade. But I agreed to help them. And one of the activities I did, I don't know, I'm a huge Lucille Ball fan. And she had this one episode where Ricky was trying to read something and she was constantly correcting him because he was like frustrated with between the word bow and through and rough and how they all, you know, the amenities with the language. And it basically showed them that it's like, yeah, it's tough, but you have to not be afraid of making mistakes. And I had to communicate that with adults. And that's something that we as an adults are harder to teach than children, because children are kind of always being told what to do. But when it comes to being an adult, you kind of have this, well, I'm an adult, I can decide. And it's sometimes it's like, no, you always have to be teachable, no matter what age you are, because there's no age limit on learning. And so we also have to overcome that fear of not knowing. And that's something I'm trying to teach myself. It's okay to not know all the answers. As a teacher, you always want to come up with them, right? Because that's your job. But it's okay to tell your students, I don't know the answer. Let's go find out. Let's go investigate it. Well, I'm going to come back to you with that. And when it comes to language, it's more than just the words. It's more than just the grammar. For me, language is also the code, you know, that you are showing who you are as a person. Your behavior is still language. Your reaction is still language. There's a lot more than just the code that you're speaking with. And so keeping yourself open, because like I said, I didn't speak after that incident for the rest of the school year and the next one afterwards. I didn't open up until I think it was like 8th grade, when my teacher's like, who are you? You're not shutting up now. I was like, oh, I learned. Now I can speak. Now you can't shut me up, you know. But before then, I wouldn't say a word. So that's just, you know, it's part of learning. And like I said, I should have known that I was going to be an English teacher. I thought I was going to be a veterinarian, honestly. But I should have known the way I dove into the language, the way I dissected it, because and I'm such a nerd when it comes to language, because it's something that, like I said, humanity, it's what brings I'm a dangerous optimist sometimes, which is why Joey and I work together, because we, you know, he keeps me centered and I lift him up, you know. But when it comes to it, I'm like, we're humans, we can do this, you know. Let's get this together, you know, as humans. It's like, I teach in a school, a Title I school. I don't know if you don't know what that means. It's just supposed to be for like severely underserved communities and whatever. And I would say a good 96% of my students are Black. And so here comes this Puerto Rican. They've never seen a Puerto Rican before, not in Cincinnati, not in that school. And so they're like, what is she? Notice what they said, what? And so they asked me, they approached me, hey, Miss Felicia, so what are you? And I go, what do you mean? They said, well, you know, where do you come from? I go, Earth. That was my answer. I'm an Earthling. Aren't you? You're not from here? And so she cracked up, you know, then she's like, no, I mean, you know, what race are you? I was like, well, that's a complicated question. But if you want to know where I lived before Ohio, yes, you know, they were trying to get, like, I lived in Puerto Rico, you know. And they're like, oh, okay. And then I started getting, I'm half Puerto Rican, or, you know, my friend, you know, and I'm like, okay, there goes the connection. They wanted to connect with me culturally first to understand. And I know that that's the curiosity that's natural, you know, in my kids. But I also wanted to show that it doesn't matter, you know. What you should be asking me is who I am, not what I am. And I want you to do the same thing. And so I would push that a lot in my classes. I was like, who are you? Not what are you? Who are you? Do you know yet? Now I teach middle school, so they don't know. They're learning. They're learning who they are. And I want to help them on that journey, you know. But that language is
Mazen, I don't know about you, but who are you, or who you are is ringing Rami's song.
Oh yeah?
Did it? So I don't know if did you listen to the first, you were tuned into the first panel earlier today when so Rami has and I will paste the link, or Mazen, if it's accessible to you, please paste that link on there. And in that song, he's singing it, or it's rapping, but there's the chorus, and it's in Nubian. And the words of what he's saying is actually, it's a translation of a, was a Malcolm X speech, was it? And it's, who are you? And if we're asking, who are you? And you can't answer that question in your own language from where you're coming from. And you don't even know that you don't know your own language. You don't even know that there's a language to be known to tell you who you are that carries that weight. Where does that leave you in navigating where you're moving forward, or how you move forward even? How does that connect you to keep you rooted, to keep you grounded with everything that we are? When we say, who are you? It's not just who are you. It's who are you, and who are your parents, and who are your ancestors? What was their legacy? What have they left to this world? Please take a moment and listen to this song when you can. Not just because it's a great song, and I may be biased because Rami's a friend and a comrade, and he was here with us earlier today. Just the questions. If you listen to Malcolm X's words in a different language, and by the same context, you listen, like if we were to take Mandela's words and translate them in, I don't know, Creole, or translate them in Wolof, and have people engage with them in their own language, that makes a world of a difference. It's why we're trying, and we're calling on, it's just, this is a much later project for Africa Week 2020, is to call on translators from all the different languages to pick and choose certain panels and help us translate them, so we can put subtitles, so we can have voiceovers if they want to volunteer and do voiceovers, so that what we're saying can go beyond the English speaking community of people of African ancestry. We have people who are shy to log on, shy to come on and speak with us because English isn't their first language, or because they have an accent with English. And we try reminding them, we keep saying, English is none of our first language. The English were not the first to be here. They're not a first language. They can be the first language to some people, sure. But if it's not your first language, it's not something to be ashamed of. I happen to speak English before I spoke Arabic, before I still don't speak Nubian, so I can't even say that. But it was because my mother put that in, it was her determination. She's like, you will walk into whatever room and you will beat them in their own language. And that was all great and well, until I realized I don't know my own language. What good is me communicating to them in their language? Yes, I'm able to put each and every one of them in their place, in their language. But when they come and ask me how I say it in my language, and I am left with nothing but, where does that leave me? How does that not make me a hypocrite?
And I think something that's really powerful about that, Dima, is that like when you ask a question like, who are you? Like when you respond to that in Nubian, like for example, I would say like, I am the son of so-and-so, you know, and I come from X, Y. You don't respond with like, my name is, you know, my name is a completely different question. It's not who are you? Your name, when you ask what is your name, is what do they call you? But when you ask who are you, you the response to that is, I am the son of so-and-so from this particular place, from this location. You never give your name, which is really, really interesting, because your name is a completely different question, you know? Here in English, when we ask who are you, we're asking what is your name? That's the essence of that question. But when you ask who are you, for example, in Nubian, you're asking like, I can't even put it into words. Like it's such a profound thing. Like, you know, what is the essence of your being? What makes you you? And what makes me me is that I am the son of such and such. I'm from this place. I'm from that. And that's how you respond back. And I think that's such a, you know, an eye-opening experience. I never thought of that until now. Like usually when somebody asks me that question, I just respond back automatically. You know, it becomes a reflex. I've never really given thought into what it is that I'm saying when I'm responding to this question. And that in itself is a very powerful thing, because that teaches history, you know? When you say I'm the son of so from this place, that is a powerful thing. That is saying that this is where I originate from. This is who I am. This is the culture that I belong to. And oh man, like you guys just blew my mind with that.
Absolutely. It's
Definitely.
it's so important. Like it's at the heart of everything. It's the reason for my first fight with my dad. Like, really, how dare you not teach me this language? I can't even put it on my mother because my mother doesn't speak the language because her father did not teach her that language. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, is not Nubian. She doesn't speak the language. I understand maybe it not being packed, but my grandfather, he had no excuse as far as I'm concerned, except the forced assimilation and the consequence of the Arabization of our culture and of our heritage. And much like what Bedo was saying, our speaking the Nubian language is very much an act of resilience. These young people in Alexandria, the young Nubians in Alexandria who created this app of which we played the video at the beginning of this panel, they're doing this app. Okay. They started this app with their own pocket money on their free time to try and do whatever they can because they got sick and tired of going into a room of elders who are sitting and complaining about the language dying. Yes, the language is dying. What are you as elders doing about it? How are you engaging us as youth to see what works for us to make this language engaging? Because if we come forward with ideas, one of the first things that flies back is, you don't know how it's done. That's not how it's done. That's not how you teach the language. Maybe that's not how you learn the language. Maybe that's not how you would teach the language. But if we're telling you this is how we learn, this is how our peers would want to learn, this is how our kids might be more inclined to engage, listen. This is why this panel is focusing on the intergenerational effort to do this. And I hope that our speakers will still be able to tune in later. I know we've had plenty of challenges with technology and with passing things from one platform. If they do join, we had a father and a daughter, a Nubian father and daughter who have gone on this journey on preserving this language together, Nubian language. And then we also had a sister and her father preserving the Bari language. They are from South Sudan, and how that journey impacted them separately and together, and how it impacted their relationship with the language, but also impacted their sense of identity, their sense of pride in that we are reviving history in all that we do. Which is also why I'm very, very grateful that Mazen is here, because in many ways, Mazen is at the heart of an intergenerational effort, an intergenerational transboundary effort of preserving the Nubian language. And I would really, really like for him to tell us a little bit about that, because obviously there are challenges. You do face challenges if you're trying to raise, and I know he gets uncomfortable correcting me in certain things because it's like, it's a bit awkward just to tell you that you're saying it wrong. No, tell me that I'm saying it wrong, because if I'm saying I'm the co-founder of the Nubia Initiative and here we are going to learn Nubian and I'm going to start saying stuff and I'm going to start because I learn to teach. I'm not learning to keep this knowledge with me. When I leave, I can't take this knowledge with me. I'm leaving it here. I'm leaving it here for other people. So I want to be leaving something right. Now, tell us one time that you remember that you were just like, why am I doing this? And by the same token, something that balances out, that says, this is absolutely 1000% worth it.
Whew. Oh man. I've had a lot of those experiences within the past month. But kind of to illustrate an example of it. Boy. Okay. Because I don't know how to I don't know what the way is to explain the situation, but I'm just gonna tell it what it is, to be quite frank. So a colleague of mine, a former colleague of mine, I don't even know what word to use, an associate, somebody who I considered a friend. I absolutely don't have the word for it, but somebody that I knew wanted to name a magazine after a word that is that's in the Nubian language, and this word, when translated, means Queen Mother. It means a whole bunch of different things. Unfortunately, the history of this word is very convoluted within Sudanese history itself. And this word has come to mean something completely different than what it originally meant. And post-Sudanese revolution, it has taken on a sort of a different meaning without people actually knowing the history behind this word. And so now, everybody says this word without really acknowledging where this word came from and kind of what is going on with the indigenous group of people that this word belongs to. And so the word that I'm speaking of is obviously kandaka. And a situation that occurred that was just like, why am I going through all of this, is when I began to kind of explain to people the history of this word and how it has, what it has brought with it in terms of politics, in terms of culture, in terms of erasure, in terms of all these things. And the backlash that I have faced is just an immense amount of backlash from people who are telling me, for example, we're all Sudanese. Why are you trying to create division within us? Why are you trying to, why are you being such a tribalist? Why are you being such a this and this and that? Because I'm Nubian myself, and this word comes from the language that I speak. And so they'll tell me these kinds of things, and without really understanding just kind of what it means to a group of people when you take a word and you essentially give it a completely different context. And when those people say, wait a minute, that's not how the history of this word is not, that's not it at all. But that's definitely been one of those instances where I've just been like, why am I doing this? What is the point of all this, especially when you become ostracized from your community. And as Africans and as Sudanese, one of the things that's vital to us is our community itself. So to be cut off from community is to essentially be cut off from everything. You can't be an African by yourself. It's impossible to it's impossible to function individually. So that's definitely been something that has just made me like, what is it that I'm doing? Why am I doing this? For what? But I think definitely a moment that I had where I was like, okay, I need to keep pushing, like this needs to continue to happen, is when I have gotten, people from around the world, Nubians from around the world, who have been reaching out to me and have been saying, we have these conversations within ourselves, but we haven't had the strength to voice it publicly. So thank you for being our voice. Thank you for bringing this to the attention of people and for saying this, because this is how we feel, but we haven't really been able to find the words for it like you have, or to ring the alarm in the way that you have rung it. So that's definitely been a powerful experience for me, and definitely been something that has fueled me to continue to keep pushing.
Thank you for sharing that. Not the direction I thought you were going to go, but I think I need to correct you in something here. You haven't just been ostracized. You continue to be ostracized. You continue to be a target. You continue to be put under a microscope for daring to reclaim a word that in so many ways embodies who we are as a people. Embodied who built our civilization, who left this legacy behind. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for doing what you do. And thank you for always being ready to educate despite that. And for those of you who haven't heard, the word is kandaka. And yesterday in Black Woman, I Promise You, open mic, Mazin dropped the mic at the Kandaka, I Promise You piece. And a lot of it had to do with his own journey, with preserving our heritage, preserving our word, preserving our language, preserving who we are through this, what is now known as the Kandaka Gate. It needs to, Mazen. That's you're in now. You're in. Sandra, tell us a time where it had you questioning, where learning this language, where teaching a language had you questioning, why is it important to do this? Why am I doing this? Like, given what's being thrown at me, why am I doing it? Why is it important to do it?
You know, I just went through that, I would say, this past school year. Before the whole spring with the COVID thing or what have you, there was a moment where I was extremely frustrated because the kids just didn't see enough. No matter how much I pushed, no matter how much I tried, I didn't see that kind of like what we call that feedback, right? Of wanting to learn. And it threw me for a loop for a moment. And I asked myself the same question: why am I doing this? What am I getting out of this? I became a teacher so I can help those who want to learn. But why am I day in and day out? It's like pulling teeth, and I don't see the purpose of me being here anymore if you don't want to learn. And I guess it was the first time that I've confronted something like that, because being an English teacher in Puerto Rico, most of the kids want to learn because the native language is Spanish. And although they might have been in that school and they can speak both languages fluently, there's always that, small group of kids that just really don't know. And, and I help them out. And by the end of the year, they got it. They're good enough to be able to move on and continue their journey. But it's very different when you're teaching native speakers, right? And I teach English class. So I asked myself that same question: what am I doing here? What's my purpose? And that's frustrating overall as a teacher, and even harder to be an English teacher to teach a whole bunch of kids. Oh, I know English, so what's important about, what's so important about me learning these things? And it's like, I still need to learn. So I had to kind of like bring them back down, and I say, hey, I'm an adult. I have a college degree. I went to school, whatever the case may be, but I'm still learning. I don't know all the words in this book. And how dare you think that you've got no more knowledge than me, or think that you're better than I am, where you don't have to learn, but I do. So it was kind of like a reality check for myself, because my students did come to me at the end of class, because I broke down, and we're human beings. So when we break down, I break down hard, because I'm always real with my students. I don't try to put a facade, and this is who I am. And you're going to get the attitude, and you're going to get the sarcasm, and I'm snide. I'm not a conventional teacher. I'm not going to be like, oh, this is a perfect world in the classroom. That doesn't fly with me, because my kids need to understand that I'm real, and they need to understand that this is real, that what we're teaching them is real. But more importantly, my kids, some of them came back to me, like, I want to learn. I'm here. And that kind of like, whoa, okay, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Maybe out of 25 kids, you 3 are the only ones that right now want to learn. You 3 matter. You matter. And I apologize for making you feel like you don't when I was speaking to the class in general. So when it came to language, they used that language and expressed it to me and said, I'm here. I want to learn. Don't give up on us. We're here. Don't give up on us. And that was a wake up moment for me, because I was gonna change careers and go ahead and be a carpenter, because I love woodworking. So I was gonna completely change careers because I was done. And it kind of like woke me up, and I said, no. My babies still need me. And even if it's just those 3 today, tomorrow, it might be 5, it might be 10, slowly but surely it might be that way. But going back to what the hermanito was saying about that one word, right? There's a one word in Puerto Rico that can be used depending on who you're speaking to. Yes, Joey, you knew it. I was going to go there. Jíbaro. So jíbaro is, it's supposed to mean countrymen, right? It's supposed to be man of the country, like the farmers, those who live up in the extreme rural areas and whatnot. And when we are living in the mountains in Puerto Rico, you got those, you know, switchback roads and barely this wide for a truck. You know, it's like up in the mountains. And that word Jibaro is an honorable word. If you're a Jibaro, that means that you are a person of the country. You are the countryman, the backbone of the culture. It's what brought the origins of certain kinds of music, you know. And my family comes from a town called Lares. And so my grandfather's brother, may he rest in peace, he's a troubadour, right? So these are the ones that would kind of like improvise and sing, and they would play their instruments, and they would do what we would call parrandas, which is kind of like the every Christmas, it's kind of like in celebration, and you go from house to house to house singing, and you sing carols. It's like caroling, but to the extreme, the way we do in Puerto Rico. And those are jibaros, but yet you take that word. Some people have taken that word and use it as a derogatory term to be like somebody who's a hick, okay? Somebody who's not cool, somebody who's ignorant. And I had to re-educate my students in Puerto Rico because they go, look at that hick, mira ese jibaro. And I, you know, and I'd look at them, I was like, oh, you're calling him an honorable person, right? And they're like, no, you know, he did something that was, you know, he didn't know and he was ignorant. And I was like, no, but jibaro means an honorable person. And they're like, what, doesn't it mean? I said, no, that's not what it's supposed to mean. Just because you're from the mountains doesn't mean that you don't have any knowledge. Just because you're not from the city, you're just from a different place. They are the foothold of our culture. So how dare you use it in a derogatory term? And I had to help turn that around because it was used as a derogatory term. So jibaro for us, and what I try to continue to teach, is exactly, Joey. When it hurts when somebody takes that word and turns it on you as if it was something negative. And no, it's an honorable title. Use it as such. So see, yo soy jibara. That's who I am. I am of my country. And although I wasn't born there, because I wasn't born in Puerto Rico, I am definitely from there. That's where my heart is. That's where my mother is. I know I don't feel like I'm at home until I'm there, you know? And that's something that I can relate to when it comes to claiming back that word and putting it in its rightful place. So for me, that the context behind that word in the language is extremely important. So on both sides, it's extremely important. So yeah.
That's exactly like the word falah in Egypt. And falah is the countryman, is the person who oh my God, Mazen, I'm drawing a blank because I need to put food in my system and coffee. Yiflah, like not farms.
But
Yeah,
falah comes from
works with the land.
yeah, a person, yeah. But it also it comes from the word excellence. That's the weird thing about it, you know. And so it's used as like when essentially like when you have a caste system, it's looked at as like the bottom of the pyramid, you know, like you're like the scum, you know, and so
that's what it's become now. That's how it's used today. So in many ways, jibaro in Puerto Rico is falah in Egypt, because now if you're not up to the like if you're not appeasing the outside expectation of what it is to be classy or normal or whatever, then you're a falah, then you're just like you're below that, then you're ignorant or you're lacking is the word. But as Mazen says, falah comes from excellence, comes from working with the land, it comes from going out and working for things, working for what it is that is yours, working for your community, working for your people, taking pride and honor in working for and with your people. I think though with Kandaka, it's the opposite of this spectrum. And not that I want to go and drag back into this Kandaka gate again. I think we'll pause that, and we have a whole Nubia week coming up in September, where this can be dissected left, right, and center. But it's when the use of that word is prompted to be part of the crowd, be part of the group, when you're not actually doing anything to acknowledge that very group that you are choosing to be part of, or that you are trying to be part of. And that's where the pain comes from. It's not so much that we're saying don't use that word. Use that word, but understand its history, understand its weight, understand, its magnitude, understand what it holds to the people who speak this language. Yeah, it's not that they're using the word in a derogatory term, but if we dare explain that this is so much, this is at such a certain level that you need to have excelled upon excelled upon excelled upon excelled to understand what this word actually means, it's taken as elitist, it's taken as tribalist, it's taken as, we are snobby and not wanting, when really all we're trying to say is, this is our language, this is a language we can no longer speak because the system that you were silent about banned us from learning it. And so this is what we have left of this language. I think the internet keeps jumping on and off. I know we have Alexandra with some truth about her language, her ancestors' language. You're muted.
Hi.
And please, anyone tuning in, if you have your own story of you learning your language, why it's important to learn your language, what's been successful, and you'd like to join us, please let us know. Please let us know so we can drop the link, tune you in, and share your truth with us, because we're all here to learn. We all do things differently, but there's something to learn in every way we're doing it. Hi, Alexandra. Thank you for tuning in.
Hi. I've been listening the whole time. I have been following Kandaka. What did you call it?
Kandaka Gate.
Kandaka Gate. Since we first talked about it, and it takes courage to face people who don't understand and have some semblance of power. So blessings to that journey. I want to say also Beto is listening, and Beto is like a historian and has taught me about some words himself. So Beto, if you're around,
you have the link, but I know he's also driving.
Oh,
right?
they're driving
going to the river, so I'm not sure. I don't know how he's driving and typing. This is some sorcery that's happening. Right?
He's with Ira. Maybe she's driving, he's typing.
Well, if he is, then he needs to tune in.
Yeah.
Then you have no excuse. One person can hold on the phone and you can share the knowledge.
Okay, so I have two stories to share. The first one is I met with my spiritual family, my family in West Africa last year. And one of the things that was very clear was that most people speak, like the average is like 5 languages in the areas I was in. And what's so interesting to my own conditioning is like, it's not like it was that, we get sold this idea that you have to be smart that smart has to do with our school system, right? And like you go through, if you do really well, that makes that then you're smart. And I struggled in the school system. Like I struggled to find a lot of enjoyment in getting A's and honors and stuff. Like it just wasn't for me. And so there was this sort of further realization when I went there of like, oh, look at the brilliance of intelligence here. Everyone here speaks 5 languages minimum. And I was in one of the poorest countries in Africa. I was in Benin. And then I was also in Togo and Ghana. And I was sitting at the table with a few people, and I was listening, and they were speaking Fon, French, and Ewe. And now, if I'm hearing all of them together, I can't really tell the difference. I'm sure if somebody told me what to look for, I could. But I was listening to them talk, and that was a really humbling thing about this almost 30-day trip, was I just listening to indigenous languages the whole time. It was just coming through. And when you hear, like, for example, if I hear German, I recognize some of the structure, right? Like, I might not know what they're saying, but I recognize some of the structure. If I hear Spanish, I know a little bit of Spanish. If I hear French, I understand little bits and pieces. But ultimately, these languages were as foreign to me as anything. And so as I was sitting there listening, this is like day 2, second day of ever really being exposed to Ewe or Fon. And I'm realizing that as every once in a while, my friend would turn to me and just give me update, like bullet points on what they were talking about. And I realized that depending on what the subject was, they were changing their language seamlessly. I was listening to French and hearing a couple words I recognized, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is not French anymore. And then she'd tell me something else, and I'd be like, what is this? And they'd be back to French. And I would listen to hours of conversation every day where people were and then some people would be speaking in French and some people would be responding in way. And language was this dance that was going on there. And it wasn't like anybody was announcing, now we're speaking Fon. It's just, and my friend would say, like, oh, she only knows how to talk about this in Ewe. And so this person over here doesn't speak Ewe, but he speaks Ga, Fon, and this other thing. So sometimes we'd be in circles where everybody still spoke 4 languages, but 2 of them in the circle didn't have that common language. And so you'd have someone in the middle translating who speaks both their language. It was just it was amazing. And I immediately, I want to continue to go there. This is my family. And so I was saying, I have to learn Ewe. And they were like, you have to be here to learn it. You can't learn it from somewhere else. It's something that you have to be on the land to learn, to really be understood. They were like, you can study forever. And then if you come here, no one's still going to understand you. You have to learn here. And we were like, okay, all right. And so that's what then inspired me to, they were like, the best thing you can learn is French, right? Because these are former colonies, and that's why a lot of people in that area speak French. And when I realized this, I laughed in my heart, because when I was in school, I took Spanish, and my grandmother was upset with my mom because my grandmother speaks Creole, right? My whole grandmother's line. So she's 97 or 96 or 97. And she's the only one left that speaks. That whole line and up all spoke Creole. And the reason they didn't teach it their kids is because they wanted to be able to talk without their kids knowing what they were talking about. And these women are, and the men, they're talkers. These are, what's up, Diva?
That's exactly what my father did.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens here in our house also.
And I mean, yeah. So my mom, no one below my grandmother learned in any of there were 13 sisters and brothers. No one taught their kids. Okay. And then, so over time I started learning funny things about, okay, here's the other thing about the Creole they speak, is that they can talk with somebody who speaks French and can have a conversation. So Creole is a mix of the French and I don't know if pidgin is the right term, but there's like local, like indigenous type language that's mixed in it. And there's in some Creole, there are like what they call Indios words. So like it's like from tribes that were in the areas, like Choctaw and stuff like that. So just depending on where you because remember, these languages are like life forms of their own, right? So so this is what I remember as a kid, and I actually found a woman who like has this essence online. I've seen this video from a long time ago. I refound it for this thing. I've not rewatched it, so I'm so sorry if she says a cuss word, but this is what I remember from a kid. Okay, now my temperament is like I can get loud and I can talk a lot, but I then have to like come back and like settle myself, right? But so being in spaces where there's like a lot of people talking over each other is not my thing, but it is how my family communicates. My mom's family, they're just like all talking. Okay, I found that when I was in the Caribbean last time, I was in Dominican Republic, I would sit in these buses, everybody's talking over each other and they're able to actually hold coherent conversations all at the same time. That's the way my mom's family is, and I never could do that. I always had to stand in the background. I was like, it's too much, wait. It's too much, you know? So when I was a kid, I would sit in my grandmother's house and she'd be on the phone speaking in French and then English and then, speaking in Creole and then English and then Creole. And then she'd enunciate or she'd punctuate with cuss words in English and in French. And so she'd be like, I don't even know how to copy Creole. She'd be like, Creole. Then she'd be like, shit. And I'd be like, oh, grandma said shit. Or she'd like be speaking in English and then she'd be like saying, and then she'd be like escalating in her voice. And then she'd just come in with this, it was almost like this dirgy chant, like, and I'm like, she's saying really nasty stuff right now. Or stuff she's not supposed to say, right? And so that's how I experienced Creole. Okay. So I found this woman online, and also this is another thing. I think this is a Southern thing, but someone told me that this is a Creole thing. And it's something that I experienced in West Africa as well. And that is not everybody knows each other's real names. So like, if everybody's in the same line, they sort of know each other's names because they grew up together, but then they're like 80s, so they don't always remember each other's names. But as far as cousins go in the family, because everybody has a name that is a cut down French word creolized. So I didn't know any of my grandmother's sisters and brothers. I didn't know, my mom didn't know any of their names. They're all these Creole, there's like a French word, but then cut down. So like there was one aunt I had, her name was Peen, but it was short for like peanut. I don't even know. It was like a 10-letter word. It was really, really long. And then my mom just found out like years after her death that it actually meant this. And then we had to translate it and it actually meant something else. But but nobody knows their name. They just know these like little codes for everybody. Okay. So I found this woman and I'm hoping, from what I remember, I think it's okay. I don't think she says anything terrible, but this woman has this energy of, the last time I watched this video was quite a bit ago, but okay. So this is.
Jackie and her daughter have come. Who are you talking to? Kisisa. Did you know that Kelly's brother died? Boy. Le plus vieux. The older one. Mm-hmm. He just came the other day when Kelly died and he looked good. No, he lives in Fort Worth, Mom. Fort Worth? Fort Worth, not Fort Hood. Okay. His wife went outside. He was dead outside. I guess. Who are you talking to, Mom? Who are you talking to? not the name, you don't know who you talking to? Kissy Sa. Moi allons avait parlé presque toute la journaliste là m'a appelé à cabinet là ko à tapiken de tomates. Yeah, we talked all day long. She was canning tomatoes. That night, she was going to call her. She called about 4 times during the day. She was going to call to tell them that Uric son had been killed, and she was dead in the bathtub.
Okay, that's enough of that. So, so that is the sound. Oh wait, I stopped. Okay, so that's the sound, and I want to point out that if you're in New Orleans, something that so for example, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. One thing that I picked up in the Pacific Northwest is I because people are get very offended by direct statements, I started noticing, and very offended by me because I make direct statements, I started noticing that my language started taking upwards inflection because people don't like direct statements. They like questions. So they'll end all their sentences like this, right? And so one thing you'll notice in New Orleans, everywhere, whether they're Creole or not, is that people have that melodic sound. It's almost like, for me, when I go back, it almost sounds like people are consciously having fun with their own speech patterns. Like it's like a choice, but it's not. It's just the way it's like like that's really how it sounds. And so this woman, you can hear that melody. And my grandmother, even though she doesn't have people to speak Creole with anymore, she still speaks like that. She still has that melody in her language. That's my story.
Definitely the melody. I can hear the and the semblance happens in Spanish, especially in Puerto Rico. Because I'm here, I teach, when I do have Spanish speaking students, the majority are coming from South America. So I have kids from Guatemala, I have kids from Honduras, I have kids from all these different kinds. And I have to be very careful what I say, right, to these parents, because what is a word that's commonly used in Puerto Rico is not the word that I want to use with them. And it happened to me. I used one word and I just said, why don't you take this road? And I used the wrong word. And that was it. One mom freaked out, and then the other mom was like, it's okay, she doesn't know, she's Puerto Rican, you know. And so I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And I'm over here addressing a parent. But as far as the melody, that is something that is known, and it depends on who's speaking to whom. If I'm speaking to somebody from the Dominican Republic, I can hear a completely different melody than the way I'm used to hearing at home in Puerto Rico. And so you hear, oh, pero ¿qué te pasa? Because my grandfather lived in the Dominican Republic. And so I have that conversation. And then I go to Puerto Rico, and then you'll hear
So I was in Caribbean 12-ish years ago, and I went to Puerto Rico, and then went to Dominican Republic. That in that direction. And so like the Puerto Rican felt like this right. But then when I got to Dominican Republic, it sounded like and it felt like it felt like two completely different languages to me. Like I couldn't. It was two completely different languages, and it. But you know what it did was it snapped in my mind all the schooling that I had from speaking Spanish in school, learning Spanish in school. I never really could speak it. And then I became fluent. This was 10, 15 years later. Then I went there, and just by being there and having the building blocks of the language within me, I was fluent by 3 months, you know. Now I don't have any more because I don't practice.
Immersion.
Immersion counts. I just want to put my
movies in Spanish.
I have started to actually put subtitles in Spanish on my movies, just so I can remember certain vocab words. I just want to point out my mom is here, and she's saying two very recognizable speech patterns in South Louisiana, different from the rest of the South. Yeah, and I've said to my mom before, like hearing this like that kind of stuff. And when I was sitting as a little kid in my grandmother's kitchen, I sometimes wonder if people were able to hear each other talking over each other because of those melodies in their voices. Like, I wonder if, because there's certain things that are shared between everybody speaking, whether it's English or Creole, like there's certain things you'll hear that are the same for everyone. But I think sometimes I think that people have their own very specific melody, because it's in South Louisiana. It's like I said, it feels like they're consciously playing with it on purpose. And so I just feel like Mama says they were forbidden speaking Creole in school because teachers said it kept them from speaking English correctly, right? That's white supremacism right there.
That is the story of Nubians and the story of endangered languages. And if we dare say this, if you dare say we are not allowed to speak our own language, you know that Egypt used the Nubian language as a secret code in the war that they had, the 73 war they had against Israel. That war, they used the Nubian language, and then they went and banned the language to be taught in schools, like.
And then Israel went and made sure that that language was taught in their schools.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay.
I'm just going to quickly call my grandma and see if she's willing to speak, if she can speak a little bit. So see me on the phone, I'm going to mute.
Please do that. We have about less than 20 minutes before our next panel. And as you call your grandmother, I just want to say that the next panel is called Ancestral Wheels, and we have Malaz coming in to talk about her Haboba van, and Haboba means grandmother. So let's hope your Haboba is tuning in and able to share with us this language, so we can hear it. I want to maybe put forward this challenge, because what we're trying to do here, what we always try doing at Africa Week 2020, is exchange the best practices, right? Exchange the things that have worked. Mazen, I know you are doing a lot of work in either not just building a dictionary, but like having this platform where the languages, you're connecting these dots between the language. And I'm so grateful to your nerdiness, because every now and then you'll come forward with like a fact or something that connects our vast heritage to something we interact with and engage with today. Be it, what was the last one? The Avatar, the connection to Avatar.
So Ewa in Nubian means to pray. And so I was looking through the movie Avatar, and I was watching and I was like, wait a minute, they prayed towards Ewa. Ewa is their god and their goddess. Why is this? You know, and then I went and looked at that and I was like, oh, cool. So I texted Dima. I was like, hey, Dima, did you know that Ewa means to pray in Nubian, and that in Avatar, the thing that they pray towards to is called Ewa? And she actually texted me back and she's like, you're such a little nerd.
But again, it's not just that. And the panel before, we were talking about the Wakanda Gate of Africa. And I think on there as well, I had such a fit at one of the African Union briefings, because there they are calling the youth, the African youth, the Wakanda generation. And they have these kids doing the Wakanda greeting. And I was like, really? We're going to go ahead and call this the Wakanda greeting when there are statues of my ancestors standing doing this? Like, before your seeds were even planted, you're going to come here and call this the Wakanda salute? Moving right along, I want to share some of the practices that we are doing with the Nubia Initiative. We tried putting it forward as part of Nubian Heritage Month last month, and there's still some hesitation, but also the use of technology with our elders is still uncharted territories for some. But I really do want to encourage everyone who is trying to preserve a language, not just the language, but also trying to preserve our truth, our narrative. If we are really about Africanizing Africa Rising, if we are really about reclaiming how we rise as people of African ancestry, then we need to start documenting these truths. We need to start documenting these memories. We need to start recording all these things. And one of the things we're doing with the Nubia Initiative is we ask people to record our grandparents, their uncles, their aunts, to say their favorite memory or their worst memory or any memory or something, or sing in our language. We'll later have it translated and we'll put the subtitles and everything, but for the language itself not to die. And I want to share with you, if that's okay. Earlier on, I started and I said that I went to visit my father's sister, and I don't speak the language. I don't speak Nubian, and she doesn't speak Arabic. And there was no shortage in fun in communicating with her, even though we don't speak the same language, because the main language, and really the only language that matters between us as a people, between us as a family, is the language of love. And that's what we tell, yes, Sandra, it's what we tell anyone who has any hesitation to tune into our family hour, which is at the end of every one of our Africa Week 2020 events, that really it doesn't matter if you don't speak English, if you don't speak in whatever language you speak.
Okay. Grandma, will you say hello and introduce yourself in Creole?
Bonjour. Okay, that's hello. Comment j'appelle?
Will you tell us a little story in Creole?
Tell you all the story in Creole?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, hold on. Ma fille bien bon matin. Bon manger déjeuner. And then, dans mon backyard.
Huh?
C'est tout ce que j'ai dit. C'est tout ce que j'ai dit. Mon partenaire, ça tous les mon fils, ça tous les mon dit. Mon nom, Mathieu, ma quatre petits. Et mon mari, il est passé, pas here anymore. C'est tout ce que j'ai dit. Can I hold a big conversation? Bonne nuit. Goodbye, okay. Did you all understand?
No, because we don't speak Creole, but we wanted to hear it.
I had breakfast in my yard this morning. And I have 4 children. And that's about all I can say at this point.
Ah.
I don't know what you wanted me to talk about.
Can you ask her to comment? Can you ask her to comment on your mom's?
My mom said that you all didn't teach them Creole, so you all could gossip in Creole and they wouldn't be able to hear.
Well, you know what? In Creole, I understand it better than I speak it.
Uh-huh.
You see, I can understand it much better. I can say words and count. I can count to 20 or to 30, 40. I can, like an honest 1 day, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8, 9, 10.
Grandma.
On stools, that's 12.
Grandma, Kathy, my mom, your daughter, Kathy said that you all did not teach them Creole so that you could all gossip.
I could speak it.
Okay.
I could speak speak it, but I didn't read it. I didn't learn it from the book. I learned it from hearing other people speak it.
Grandma, why didn't you teach your kids Creole?
Well, because they stopped us from speaking it.
Okay.
They said it meant that we were doing poor grammar, which was not so. But now they're deciding that children should be speaking Creole. Creole again, they're teaching French. French is nothing but Creole is nothing but broken French.
Ah.
Creole is French. That's all. It's just because if anybody speaking in French, I can understand every word that they say.
Yeah, every word. I love it.
Alexandra, can you ask her how she thinks Creole should be preserved?
I know the month of the year.
How the language should be preserved? How we can preserve the language?
Mars, April.
Grandma.
May, June.
Grandma.
July.
Grandma. Grandma.
September.
Grandma.
December.
Grandma, how can we preserve Creole? Like, how can we make sure that it's protected and people learn it? How can we preserve this language?
How quick you can learn it by listening? Because the only thing I overheard was they would say something to us like, "I did stop that," or words like that. But a lot of times, those older people had so many secrets they didn't want you to know. So they were speaking in Creole so you couldn't understand what they were saying. You know. But I know
Yes.
when I was trying to help Blair with Creole, she told me Creole and French were not the same. It's so much so like, if you can speak Creole, you got French covered.
What do you think is the best way for people to respect the language and to preserve it?
What I think is the best way? Well, sort of like what they're doing now. They're going back to it. Children are taking French and all in school again. But at one point they stopped. You know what? Stopped us from speaking it when we were growing up. They didn't even want to hear it because they would say like it's broken. There's certain words like running. See, in French, like they don't say running, playing. They don't pronounce the ing. Like they playing. They don't pronounce the ing. Like words like I can't exactly explain it. Like words, it's hard for me to say like these, but because in French that sound is dropped or something.
Grandma, thank you for sharing with us.
Merci. Thank you.
People are saying thank you, Grandma.
Thank you, Granny.
But she's already gone. She doesn't hear very well, so
what a blessing. We have to listen. And as we listen, we have to record and make others listen, because you know what, even in our listening we might not catch everything. Part of the reason we've released the videos that I recorded when I was in the village is that, yeah, okay, I know what they were saying. I have an idea about what they were saying because I remember when I recorded it, but I don't know word for word what it means. And essentially, I was asking for our community to step up and help preserve what was being said.
Yes.
Yes. Help preserve the intricacies. So I want to quickly go back to my aunt. I have 2 little videos that I'd like to share with you. If it will allow me, I hope. Yes, here. Mazen, you might laugh. So this was me stopping by to leave, to say my goodbyes before I leave to America to come for the conference here. So I was going to pay my respects before I leave the island. And she sang the song. Again, remember, we don't speak. And there I am, very happy, very excited. I was like, oh, this sounds lovely. What is she saying? And then everyone's telling me, Mazen, what is she saying?
She said, I hope you go and get married and come back the husband.
Yes. I was like, okay, sure. You just wait. Now I want to get this one. Bless her heart. Again, we're communicating in signs and love. That's really all we were doing. I want to see where is, oh, it's not letting me now. Oh, here. Voila. Does it do it? Application window. There we go.
Ini furun sibelo kaya fi sibelo. Ini inna kabatori. Na ologo. Inna kabatori. Indologon iktori yiki. Ika indologon ina ik. Yiki ko ina tori. Inogoni dabtan mashu shay da. It is very simple house زي ما بقول. بيت نوبي تمام ده.
Mazen?
So he's explaining how the oven works. So he says initially this is where the food goes, where he lifts the cover. And then in the hole, he's saying this is where the fire goes. This is where the fire goes. This is where we start the fire. And then the thing on top, he said this is a grill. It's a very, it's a grill. And then in English, he says this is a very simple house, as you guys would say in English.
Bless his heart. And I've had as many videos like these, very short ones, just to ask them to tell me about something in the house or something they did or something they're doing. Like there's another video of him and this bed that he has. So Mazen, oh yes, Mazen, what is garad in English?
I have to find the word for that. Way to put me on the spot. I don't know what the English word for it is.
Right, it is, okay, it's a plant. It's used for so many different things. It's used as incense. It's used as an antibacterial if you burn it, like it purifies the air. It's a very ancestral plant, but it's also used if you have stomachache or toothache, or if you have a fever and you soak it in water and you wash your head with it the next morning, the fever is gone. They've used it in malaria. There's so many benefits to this.
Well, there could be, if I could interject, there could be various names for the same plant, because that was something that I had to learn when I was looking, because I wanted to go back and speak to my elders and find out, okay, what's the name of this plant? Because I wanted to make an herbal garden, per se, in Puerto Rico. And I knew that we called this plant this, but what's its actual name? And there was no other name except for what was locally called. No. So it could be that the species of the plant probably has a general name, but the name that they would call it there is, how'd you say it again?
Garad.
Garad. So garad could be neem for all I know, and it could probably be the very same plant because it sounds like a cure-all, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean, that when it comes to naming, when it comes to words, as far as naming a specific plant, it could be that commonly known as this here, but in other places they know it as something else.
Here's the funny thing, now it's being sold on Amazon.
Sunut.
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 Look it up. I know my fever spiked to 107 at the opening of COVID mania, and my sister was losing her mind. And I remembered that I had gotten a bag of this garad, and I just had her soak some of it, and I washed my head with it the next morning, and it was gone. Like by the end of the day, I was fine. Just to keep recording these these bits, these nuggets of wisdom, these bits of history that have been passed on, these practices that have been passed on from one generation to the next, and connect in so many ways. Because, you know, this seed, yeah, you're right, it may have a completely different name. Like, for the longest time, I thought only Sudanese, I mean, I was a child, but for the longest time as a child, I thought hibiscus was only a Sudani thing, because we drank it so much. And I'd hear my mother joke and say, you know, Sudanis don't have blood, they have hibiscus running through their streams. And it's so true, from how often you see this hibiscus. And for the first time in my life, I see the actual plant, and I see it growing when I went to my village. But, you know, I was really surprised to be working with my Slovak friend here in DC, and she has this crazy passion for hibiscus. Like, how do you know where? Like, you know, like, I know there's hibiscus tea and you have the tea bags, but like, how do you get introduced to something like that if you're not from the area? So I guess what I'm trying to ask is, please, please, please keep recording our memories, revive the practice and the effort of documenting our oral histories. We are people who speak to one another. We communicate our resilience in so many different ways. And let's keep record of that. Let's keep track of that. Let's create some form of database of snippets of grandmothers and grandfathers and uncles and aunties from around the world, of people of African ancestry, just telling us how connected we are. Because really, the more we hear their stories, the more we realize who and what and how we are one. Okay, we have 3 minutes. If you have anything to add, anything to say, anything to share, to leave our family with, please do it. We welcome you, and I want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for coming on, for telling us your experience, and to ask you to keep doing what you're doing to keep our languages alive. Thank you for coming in, and thank you so much for bringing Grandma on board.
You.
The idea was to have 2 elders here. They were both parents, and although both of them didn't tune in, we got your mom to tune in via the comments, and what a blessing and a pleasure and a privilege it was to hear your grandmother speak the language.
Her name is Mathilde Savoy Smith, and she's 96.
MashaAllah.
More power to her. More power to her.
Bless
Thank
her heart.
you. Blessings.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
It was
everybody.
a pleasure.
Thank you. Family, stay tuned. If you are still online, as we close this, refresh the page. We will be coming back with Malaz, talking to you about Haboba van. You'll find out what Haboba means, who Haboba is, and what she wants us to learn, and why Malaz made this van in her honor. Please stay tuned. Keep speaking our languages, and most of all, keep sending out love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, it is all up to our generation. We love you, we love you, we love you. Keep encouraging us, keep showing up to our lives, keep tuning into our videos. Mama, that's Alexandra's mom. Lots of love and blessings. Thank you, thank you. Here we go.